In today's video, navigating the complexity of instructional coaching in international schools. Hello, coaches. Welcome back to another episode of Coach Better Quick Tips. My name is Kim Capino, and I've worked with hundreds of teachers, coaches, and leaders in schools around the world to help them create thriving and sustainable instructional coaching programs. And I'm on a mission to help you coach better. Wherever you are in your coaching journey, we can support you. Come learn with me in one of our courses or private mentoring packages designed specifically for instructional coaches. Join our global Coach Better community, ask any questions you'd like to hear us answer, and find all of our resources for instructional coaches on our website at COACHBETTER.tv. You can also find us on social media at Eduro Learning or on our Coach Better Facebook group, and subscribe to our channel here on YouTube to catch all of our latest videos. Not sure where to start? Take our free quiz to get a tailored list of free resources delivered straight to you and designed specifically for your level of coaching experience. Find it at COACHBETTER.tv/quiz. In today's video, we're talking about the additional layers of complexity involved in instructional coaching in an international school setting. Of course, today's topic doesn't mean that instructional coaching is not complex in other settings or that any of these factors are not present in other settings. These are just 5 layers of complexity that are often the norm in international schools. As discussed on this podcast and channel many times, instructional coaching is a complex role no matter what setting you're in. It's an informal leadership position that requires that coaches balance being a peer while often being perceived as a leader. This is certainly not easy work and often requires a new set of skills when moving into an instructional coaching role. I'll link some previous videos here and in the show notes for you if you want to watch those or you missed those in the past. However, when we're working in international schools, there is often even more complexity involved in the role, which may go unrecognized by school leaders or even coaches themselves because this complexity is our normal. At the recent EARCO's Teachers Conference, we unpack some of these complexities in some of my sessions. In our conversations, we identified 5 key factors that make instructional coaching highly complex in our international school setting, and I'm going to share those 5 with you today. As you're listening or watching, I'd love to hear if these resonate with you or if you have more to add. Please leave a comment on the video if you're watching on YouTube or on the show notes if you're listening on the podcast. You can always find all the show notes for all of our episodes on our website at COACHBETTER.tv. I'm sharing this episode today because it is so essential for both coaches and school leaders to understand the inherent potential challenges to build a sustainable coaching culture, particularly in an international school context. We know that trends tend to come and go in schools in general, and the swing between implementation and discarding seems to go very fast in an international school setting. In fact, in the recent Association for the Advancement of Instructional Coaching in International Schools, or ACIS, landscape survey of international schools, many respondents noted that instructional coaching is new in their international school setting. But most of us on the ACIS team have been coaching in international schools for so long, decades, that we were part of the last trend towards instructional coaching, watched the trend swing away, and now it seems to be coming back again. Ultimately, if we believe in the power of instructional coaching for so many different reasons, for improving student learning, for building a sense of belonging in schools, for developing a culture of coaching to foster agency among students and teachers, we need to know why we have these huge swings and trends. If we want to ensure that coaching is sustainable over time, we need to understand all the different layers that make that sustainability so challenging. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay, let's jump into those 5 elements that make instructional coaching so complex in international schools. First, I want to quickly acknowledge the foundational complexities in an instructional coaching role, which I talk about here all the time on this channel and over on our social media at Eduro Learning. In summary, instructional coaches are expected to lead without being a formal leader, see the big picture, often without having all the puzzle pieces, inspire your colleagues without having a class of your own, and be the connection between teachers and leaders without really being part of either team. So really, the job is complex by design. Check out some of those other videos or episodes that I referenced earlier, where I explore these complexities due to the informal leadership aspects of the role for more on that topic. But stepping into an international school context, you find even more complexity. The first one is consistent teacher turnover. For most international schools, there is a certain percentage of teacher turnover every year. While we may have many procedures to help make these transitions as smooth as possible for both new and returning teachers, the reality is that we all have to build relationships year after year. Instructional coaching relationships require vulnerability and trust, and this takes time, sometimes even longer than just one school year. When we have consistent teacher turnover, it can feel like we're starting from scratch, building those relationships every year. This means we can begin developing a coaching relationship only to find that the teacher we're working with is leaving at the end of the year. Or we can start working with the team, but find that that work stalls when many of the team members leave. The relationships that we built to get us to this level now need to be built again with new colleagues the following year. We may also find that our coaching partners are struggling with the same challenge. While the returning teacher may have a history of working with a coach, they know that new teachers may take time to understand the value of coaching, which can slow down coaching at the team level. When our work is so dependent on relationships, and when we have consistent teacher turnover year after year, we can find that that has a huge impact on how many coaching partners we're able to work with. We may find ourselves spending more time building relationships than engaging in deep coaching cycles, especially when the school may not have a strong coaching culture yet. In one study on teacher turnover in international schools, they point out the drain on the social capital of the school when teachers are changing year after year. That has a huge impact on the sustainability and the success of instructional coaching. Challenge number 2, an extremely diverse school community. We know we are working with colleagues, students, parents, and leaders who may have completely different worldviews, trainings, and perceptions of almost everything about teaching and learning, including the concept of coaching and being coached. When we consider the visibility of instructional coaching, including teachers and leaders being vulnerable to learning in front of other colleagues or their students, we also need to keep in mind the varying perception that others may have about this kind of experience. While we may expect that everyone hired by the school has an understanding of the vision of the school, this may not always be the case. We may need to unpack the rationale for our work with a variety of stakeholder groups within the school. We may need to discuss and understand different perceptions about our work based on cultural values or past history. We may need to clarify and validate the way our work aligns with the vision and mission of the school. It is likely that instructional coaches in international schools need to feel confident having these kinds of conversations on a daily basis and at different levels so we can meet the needs of all stakeholders in understanding the value and purpose of coaching. We may also need to consider that instructional coaching may need to look different in different cultural settings. Being able to adapt for the needs of our coaching partners and understand and navigate the cultural norms around professional growth, vulnerability, and openness to learning within and between all stakeholders is another element of complexity in an international school setting. Number 3, host country culture expectations. Along with the multicultural environment of our schools, we are also located within a host country culture, which may be very different from the cultural norms of the international school. In some schools, staying after school to work is the norm. In others, the workday ends at the end of the school day. In some schools, work-life balance is highly prized and prioritized. In others, the focus is on building professional capacity, even if that means working longer days. When teachers move from country to country, it can be a challenge to adapt to new host country expectations. For instructional coaches, when we are working towards building buy-in and ownership over the coaching process, we may not always take into consideration host country culture expectations and how they may impact our work process. Navigating those norms and managing the lifestyle experiences of living in a different culture adds another layer of complexity to our work. Number 4, a lack of structural support. International schools are usually an independent organization without national, regional, or local infrastructure, funding, or support. For the most part, they don't have larger districts or governmental structures providing guidance, clarifying expectations, or defining outcomes, aside from global or regional accrediting bodies. Although this provides a large amount of professional freedom for an individual school, it also means that each international school defines programs, procedures, and structures independently. This freedom provides both a benefit and a challenge to international schools. Each school must articulate and define both the purpose and implementation of an instructional coaching program, as well as the support needed to make the program successful and sustainable, rather than being able to rely on a larger organization to provide this structure. This means that defining, building, implementing, and sustaining an instructional coaching program is dependent on the perceived needs or value of instructional coaching by the current school leadership. And much like the first item I mentioned, a consistent teacher turnover, when school leaders transition, the process of building understanding around coaching needs to begin again. Combined with all of the other factors above, this is why clarity around the definition, purpose, and process of instructional coaching in alignment with the school's vision and mission is so essential. It can be easy to assume that hiring coaches is enough to build a coaching program, but developing a coaching culture requires structural support throughout the school. Ensuring that there is time, energy, and funds to devote to the development and sustainability of a coaching program requires focus and intentionality. When international schools are very dependent on enrollment for their own sustainability, it may become challenging to devote the needed resources to structural support for instructional coaching. I have another video podcast episode I will share with you about the structures and systems needed for sustainable instructional coaching that can help unpack what I'm talking about when I'm thinking about all of these structures that need to be in place. And number 5 is a lack of consistency. Because each international school is its own institution, aside from those that are part of a larger body, it's unrealistic to expect any consistency in definition or implementation of the role of instructional coach from one school to the next. That is exactly why there is a need for the Association for the Advancement of Instructional Coaching in International Schools, and you can find more about AICIS at acis.org. That's AAICIS.org. This means that as teachers and leaders move from school to school, they may be bringing different understandings of instructional coaching, both positive and negative, from their previous experience. Because language around coaching is often vague, there can be an assumption that we're all talking about the same thing. It may not even be clear that we don't have a shared understanding until we are implementing the work. Given that there is very little research or data on instructional coaching specifically in international schools, there's also very little we can base our decisions on, aside from the personal experience of those involved. As I mentioned earlier, ACES recently conducted a landscape study of instructional coaching in international schools, and I'll link the white paper below so you can take a look at that. The lack of consistency between schools affects coaching and coaches, even in just one school in one school year. As teachers and leaders come and go, the beliefs, understandings, and implementation processes need to be revisited and redefined again and again. In many cases, instructional coaches are the only members of staff with the depth of knowledge and advocacy needed to take on this role. This often means that instructional coaches are left to do the work of defining coaching and the role of coach after they have been hired to implement the role, and again, every time they move to a new school or when their leadership changes. This is a layer of pressure and leadership expectations often placed on individual coaches or teams of coaches without realization from school leadership. And this is why I host the Coach Certificate and Mentorship Program every single year through my company, Eduro Learning. That program is specifically designed to give you the foundations needed to build a sustainable instructional coaching program in 1 year so that you can do that wherever you go, whatever school that you're in. Given that instructional coaching is already a complex position with many informal leadership responsibilities, these additional layers of complexity inherent in our international school context add another dimension. This means that international school instructional coaches really need to deeply understand the ways to advocate for, plan, and implement a successful coaching program that is designed to be sustainable from the start, whether you're staying in your current school or maybe even more so if you're moving to a new school the following year. If this is something you have been thinking about, we can support you. I have so many clients that moved to a new school this year, and despite expecting that they would have a lot of work to do to build the foundations of a coaching culture, they are shocked at how far back they have to work. Building the foundations of a coaching culture begins with clarity, and in particular, clarity with your senior leadership. If you've been watching or listening to the Coach Better podcast for a while now, you know that clarity is the first phase of the Thrive model, which was specifically designed based on all of my experience and my clients' experience in international schools. If you're ready to dig deeper into the Thrive model, make sure to access all of our free resources on our website. You'll find a free webinar, a downloadable overview of the model, and our coaching program evaluation to see where you or your program has opportunities for growth. You can find it all for free at edurolearning.com/thrive. And if you discover that you need support as you go through this process, please join us for the next cohort of the Coach Certificate and Mentorship Program. The Coach was designed for instructional school coaches that are going through this process year after year after year. And the reality is, no matter how many schools you build a coaching culture in, you always need to follow the foundations of the Thrive model to build that sustainable coaching program. In the Coach, we'll support you in developing your coaching practice and your coaching program following the Thrive model of clarity, consistency, and community. Find out more about the Coach on our website at edurolearning.com/coach. Registration opens only once a year, so if you missed registration for this year, please make sure to get on the waiting list so you're the first to know when registration opens again. Get all the details and join the waitlist at edurolearning.com/coach. If you're curious right now and you have questions, please reach out. You can leave a comment down below or on the show notes on our website at COACHBETTER TV. You can join our Coach Better Facebook group, or you can find us on social media and send me a DM. I'd love to support you on your coaching journey. See you next time.